Hi, Peter Charles here of Hooked for Life Fly Fishing, and today we're going to do the Miramichi Cosseboom. I guess I'm on a kind of a Cosseboom kick. I've done a few lately, and I kind of like the pattern and the style of tying. And this one, I'm going to make a slight modification to. Instead of just using green floss, I'm going to use a hot green floss, which is really good for steelhead, nice and bright, especially on a cloudy day. So this would be a nice little steelhead pattern as well as an Atlantic salmon fly. So let's look at the materials and get started. I'm going to start off with a size 4 salmon single for a hook. The thread is this 8-knot red Vivas. I'm going to use this Uni-French oval gold in a medium size. And as I mentioned, I'm going to use this hot green. This is fluorescent green. It really glows. The wing is going to be squirrel, and we're going to be using some yellow saddle hackle for the hackle. So let's get started. We'll just bring that back, tying a rib. This is also going to be our tag as well. Just get our thread out of the way. Now, at this stage of the game, I could, if I wanted to, just tie this off, hold it back, and continue on with it being used as the rib. So, for example, I could leave it there and then put in my floss and our tail, or I could just cut it off and then retie. So what I'm going to do in this case, I am going to just leave it like that. And this is a quicker way of tying. Now the tail on this is green floss. Same floss is used in the body. So I'm just going to cut some of this off. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to double it and then trim it. Work it right back. Then pinch it up. And then trim it just a little bit past the bend of the hook. There's our tail. Now we'll tie in our floss for the body. I'll take it to the bump, my thread to the bump, and then come forward because we're going to make 3 passes on this. I'll get my thread back and I'll come forward. We're just going to try and fill up this bump a little bit because if you look at the picture of this pattern, you see the body is rather bulbous. So I'm going to make 3 passes with the thread and 3 passes with the floss. There we go. That fills up that space somewhat. Okay, we're going to start off first pass, and that's really just to fill in that gap where you have the bump at the back, and then you can bring it up on the return, come back. Just going to bring it up, and we want to get rid of any red. And we come forward and make sure you're really crowding those turns so it's nice and smooth and thick. Also, by tripling the coverage of your floss, you avoid that problem when the floss gets wet and whatever thread you have underneath, the color bleeds through, which really makes it look ugly. So we'll tie this off. few extra turns. Half inch in here. Okay, now what I'm going to do with the rib is I'm going to make one pass right at the back, make sure there's no red showing, then I'll come forward. Yeah. Now with the Cosseboom style, we put the wing on, followed by the collar. So I've stacked some squirrel hair. The wing just stops just short of the bend of the hook. Now, as mentioned in other patterns that are done this way, you do not want too bulky a wing because you're tying hackle over the top of it. That would make it rather difficult to tie your hackle on, wind your hackle on if you had too much wing. So there we go. Get rid of the strays. Now for our yellow hackle. Push that hackle back. If you get some going forward, just push it back. One of the things you'll notice with this, with cheaper hackle, like this is pretty crappy cheap saddle hackle, you get a lot of twists in the quills, which can make doing this sort of thing a little bit trickier. If you have a really good hackle, it won't do that. There we go. Now, one of the things I tend to do when I'm using a red thread is I usually have a relatively large head because we've got this bright red thread. So why not take advantage of it and produce a really bold red head that the fish can see? I mean, red is a color that fish love in a fly, so let's take advantage of it. I know it's supposed to be a part of the fly tie's art to do a tiny fly, tiny head, but you know, I'm thinking about the fishability of the fly rather than the prettiness. You've heard me talk about this before if you've ever been on my channel. I like flies that catch fish. And sometimes works of art don't catch fish as well as simpler patterns that are tied bold. Okay, now for some head cement. You can see when I put the torch on how that body glows in UV. That's what we want, especially for cloudy days. This fly will show up beautifully. This will be a great steelhead pattern as well as a Atalntic salmon pattern. So there we go with the Miramichi Cosseboom. And some of that laying back. There we go. All ready to catch fish. I think this would be a dynamite pattern. So give it a try, the Miramichi Cosseboom. And as I say, if you want to go with a more of a chartreuse hackle instead of yellow, you know, for steelhead, go for it. Cheers.